The alarm clock screamed at 5:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 3 years. Maya's eyes felt like sandpaper as she reached over to silence the noise. Her small apartment was still dark, and she could hear her 2 kids breathing softly in the next room. For a moment, she allowed herself to stay in bed, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on her chest like a heavy blanket. But bills don't pay themselves, and her children needed breakfast. Maya dragged herself out of bed and stumbled to the tiny kitchen. The coffee maker was broken again, so she settled for instant coffee mixed with lukewarm water. The bitter taste matched how she felt inside. As she sipped the awful drink, she looked at the stack of bills on the counter. Rent was due in 5 days, and she was still short by $200. Her neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, knocked softly on the door. This sweet elderly woman had been watching Maya's kids for almost nothing, just because she understood what it meant to struggle. Maya opened the door to find the older woman already dressed and ready to take care of 8-year-old Tommy and 6-year-old Sophia. "You look tired, mija," Mrs. Rodriguez said, her voice full of concern. Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine. Just need more coffee," but she wasn't fine. She was drowning, and every day felt like she was barely keeping her head above water. By 6:45 a.m., Maya was rushing to catch the first bus to her morning job at Peterson's grocery store. The bus was crowded with other early workers, people who looked just as tired as she felt. Construction workers with dirt under their fingernails, hospital staff coming off night shifts, and cleaners heading to office buildings. These were her people, the ones who kept the city running while others slept. At the grocery store, Maya's shift started at 7:30 a.m. She worked as a cashier, scanning items and forcing smiles for customers who sometimes treated her like she was invisible. Her manager, a middle-aged man who seemed to enjoy making people feel small, was already waiting for her. "You're 3 minutes late," he said, tapping his watch. Maya bit her tongue. 3 minutes. She had run 6 blocks because the bus was delayed, but 3 minutes was apparently a crime. The morning passed in a blur of beeping scanners and demanding customers. Her feet ached in her old sneakers, the same pair she'd been wearing for 8 months because new shoes weren't in the budget. During her 15-minute break, she sat in the back room and ate a peanut butter sandwich she'd made at home. Other workers bought fresh sandwiches from the deli, but Maya couldn't afford that luxury. At 4 p.m., her first shift ended. Most people would go home, have dinner with their families, and relax. But Maya's day was only half over. She hurried to the subway station, calculating in her head whether she had enough money for the train fare. $2.75. She had exactly enough, with 15 cents left over. On the platform, she watched well-dressed people checking their phones, probably heading home to comfortable apartments and families who didn't worry about money. The train to downtown was packed. Maya squeezed between a man in an expensive suit and a woman carrying designer bags that cost more than Maya made in a month. She tried not to think about the difference between their lives and hers. Her second job was at Bright Star Cleaning Company. From 5 p.m. to 11 p.m., she cleaned office buildings in the financial district. She mopped floors that cost more per square foot than she paid for rent. She emptied trash cans filled with takeout containers from restaurants she'd never be able to afford. She wiped down desks where people made more money in a day than she made in 3 months. The work was hard on her body. Her back ached from bending over to clean, and her hands were always dry from the cleaning chemicals. But it paid $8 an hour, and she couldn't afford to be picky. That particular evening, the cleaning took longer than usual. Someone had spilled coffee all over the reception area of a law firm, and Maya spent an extra 30 minutes scrubbing the stains out of expensive carpet. By the time she finished, it was almost midnight. The subway platform was nearly empty. Only a few people waited for the late train, mostly service workers like herself, heading home after long days. Maya's body felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every muscle ached and her eyes burned from exhaustion. When the train finally arrived, Maya found a seat near the window. The car was about half full, with passengers spread out and most people looking as tired as she felt. She closed her eyes for just a moment, telling herself she'd only rest them for a few seconds. The train rocked gently as it moved through the tunnel. The rhythmic sound of wheels on tracks was almost hypnotic. Maya's head began to nod forward, and she fought to stay awake. She had 23 stops to go before her station, but exhaustion is stronger than willpower. Her eyes closed completely, and her body relaxed for the first time in 16 hours. Without realizing it, her head drifted to the side, coming to rest against the shoulder of the man sitting next to her. Through her exhausted haze, she was vaguely aware of clean fabric against her cheek and the subtle scent of expensive cologne, but she was too tired to care about embarrassment or social boundaries. For the first time all day, Maya felt completely relaxed. Her breathing became deep and steady. The stress lines on her face softened and she looked younger, more peaceful. In her sleep, she didn't look like someone who was struggling to survive. She just looked like a woman who desperately needed rest. Her hands, still slightly stained from cleaning chemicals, lay folded in her lap. Her work uniform was wrinkled and her shoes were scuffed, but there was something dignified about her even in exhaustion. This was someone who worked hard, who fought every day to build a better life for her children. The train continued its journey through the city, carrying this sleeping woman who had no idea that this moment of rest would change everything. She didn't know that the shoulder she was resting on belonged to someone who would soon become the most important person in her life. All Maya knew was that for these precious minutes, she could finally let her guard down and rest, and sometimes that's exactly when life decides to surprise us with something beautiful. David was having one of those days where everything seemed to go perfectly. His presentation to the board had gone better than expected. The quarterly numbers were strong, and he'd just closed a deal that would bring in millions for his tech company. At 42 years old, he had built something he was proud of from absolutely nothing. As the subway train rocked gently through the tunnel, David scrolled through emails on his phone, half listening to the rhythmic clacking of wheels on tracks. He wore a charcoal gray suit that cost more than most people made in a month, but he didn't think about that. Success had become normal for him, just like struggle had become normal for the woman who had just sat down beside him. At first, he barely noticed her. The train was crowded, and people sat wherever they could find space. But something made him glance up from his phone. Maybe it was the way she moved, like every step took tremendous effort. She was young, probably in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her clothes told a story that David recognized from his own childhood, worn but clean, practical but not stylish. Her shoes had definitely seen better days, and there were small stains on her uniform that no amount of washing could completely remove. David went back to his phone, reading through reports about profit margins and expansion plans. But then he felt a gentle weight against his shoulder. The woman had fallen asleep. His first instinct was to shift away or gently wake her up. This was his expensive suit after all, and he didn't know this person. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she looked so completely exhausted. Or maybe it was a memory from 25 years ago, when he was the one falling asleep on public transportation after working multiple jobs. David looked down at her peaceful face. Even in sleep, there were worry lines around her eyes, the kind that come from too many sleepless nights wondering how to pay bills. Her breathing was deep and steady, like someone who hadn't truly rested in a very long time. He noticed her hands folded in her lap. They weren't the soft hands of someone who worked in an office. These were working hands, slightly rough with small cuts and calluses that spoke of physical labor. There was a thin gold band on her ring finger, but it looked like it had been removed and put back on many times, probably pawned when money got tight. On the seat beside her was a small purse, old but well-maintained. A corner of something was sticking out. It looked like a photograph. David could see just enough to make out two small faces, children with bright smiles. The photo was worn around the edges like it had been looked at many times. The train continued its journey, and David found himself studying this sleeping stranger. There were small details that painted a picture of her life. Her employee badge was still clipped to her shirt. Actually, there were two badges. One said Peterson's Grocery and the other said Bright Star Cleaning. 2 jobs. David did quick math in his head, knowing what those positions typically paid, and realized she was probably working 16-hour days just to survive. Her phone, an older model with a cracked screen protector, buzzed softly in her pocket. David could see part of the message on the lock screen. Kids asking when you'll be home. They're fine, just worried. The sender was listed as Mrs. R. Neighbor. David felt something twist in his chest. This woman was working herself to exhaustion while her children waited at home, probably being watched by a neighbor because daycare was too expensive. He remembered his own mother working 3 jobs, coming home so tired she could barely keep her eyes open during dinner. The businessman across the aisle was staring at them with obvious disapproval, probably thinking David should wake her up. A few other passengers glanced over with expressions ranging from amusement to annoyance, but David didn't care what they thought. He adjusted his position slightly, making sure his shoulder was at a comfortable angle for her head. He moved his phone to his other hand so he wouldn't disturb her if he needed to type. These were small gestures, but they mattered. As the train stopped at various stations, people got on and off. Some passengers noticed the sleeping woman and the businessman who was carefully staying still to let her rest. A few smiled at the scene. An elderly woman gave David an approving nod, as if she understood exactly what he was doing and why it mattered. David's phone rang softly. It was his assistant, probably calling about tomorrow's schedule. He declined the call and sent a quick text. "In a meeting. We'll call back later." It wasn't exactly true, but it wasn't exactly false either. This moment felt important in a way he couldn't explain. He started thinking about his own company. They had been talking about expanding their team, particularly in the accounting department. They needed someone who was willing to learn, someone with strong work ethic and determination. As he looked at this woman's 2 employee badges, he thought about the kind of person who would work that hard just to keep going. The train passed through several more stations. David's stop was coming up in about 15 minutes, but he found himself hoping the woman would sleep a little longer. She looked so peaceful, so relaxed for the first time since she'd gotten on the train. Her breathing was steady and calm. The stress lines on her face had softened and she looked younger, more hopeful. David wondered what her dreams were, what she wanted for her life beyond just surviving day to day. He thought about his own journey. 25 years ago, he had been working in a warehouse during the day and studying computer programming at night. He remembered falling asleep on buses and trains, exhausted from 16-hour days that barely paid enough for a tiny apartment and ramen noodles for dinner. Back then, small kindnesses had meant everything. The night security guard who let him stay late in the office building to use the internet. The coffee shop owner who gave him free coffee when he studied there for hours. The stranger on the bus who woke him up gently when they reached his stop instead of letting him sleep past it. Those moments had kept him going when everything felt impossible. They reminded him that there were good people in the world, that his struggles were seen and acknowledged by others who cared. Now David was in a position to be that person for someone else. The train began to slow as it approached his station. David looked down at the sleeping woman and felt a strange reluctance to wake her, but her stop was still several stations away, and she would need to know where she was. He gently cleared his throat, then spoke in the softest voice possible. "Excuse me," he said quietly. "I think you might want to wake up." The woman's eyes fluttered open, confusion crossing her face as she realized where she was and what had happened. David watched as embarrassment flooded her features, and he prepared to do something that might change both their lives forever. Maya's eyes snapped open, and for a moment she didn't know where she was. The gentle rocking motion, the dim lights, the sound of wheels on tracks, it all came rushing back to her. The subway. She had fallen asleep, and her head was resting on someone's shoulder. Horror washed over her as she quickly sat up straight, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. The man beside her was looking at her with kind eyes, not the anger or disgust she expected to see. "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," Maya stammered, her words tumbling over each other. "I didn't mean to. I must have fallen asleep. I'm really, really sorry. I've been working since early this morning and I guess I just..." She stopped talking, realizing she was rambling. This man in his expensive suit probably didn't care about her problems. He was probably annoyed that some tired worker had drooled on his jacket. But David surprised her by smiling gently. "It's completely fine," he said. "You looked like you needed the rest. Don't worry about it at all." Maya looked around the train car, noticing that several other passengers were watching them. Some looked amused, others seemed judgmental. She felt her face get even redder. "I hope I didn't wrinkle your suit or anything," she said, unconsciously smoothing down her own rumpled uniform. "It looks expensive, and I know how hard it is to get things clean sometimes." David glanced down at his jacket and shrugged. "It's just a suit. But thank you for being concerned. I'm David, by the way." "Maya," she replied, still feeling mortified. "And I really am sorry. I don't usually... I never fall asleep on strangers. It's just been a really long day." "How long?" David asked, and there was genuine curiosity in his voice, not judgment. Maya hesitated. She didn't usually talk to strangers about her life, especially strangers who clearly came from a completely different world than hers. But something about his tone made her feel like he actually wanted to know. "I started work at 7:30 this morning," she said quietly, "at the grocery store. Then I came straight here for my cleaning job, which ended about 30 minutes ago, so about 16 hours, I guess." David's eyebrows raised slightly. "2 jobs?" Maya nodded, looking down at her hands. "Yeah, Peterson's grocery during the day and Bright Star cleaning at night. It's not ideal, but," she trailed off, not wanting to explain her financial situation to this well-dressed stranger. "That's incredibly hard work," David said, and Maya was surprised to hear respect in his voice instead of pity. "I remember working multiple jobs. It takes real strength to keep going when you're that tired." Maya looked up at him, surprised. "You worked multiple jobs?" David smiled, and for a moment he looked younger. "Warehouse during the day, studying at night, cleaning offices on weekends. This was about 25 years ago, when I was trying to get through school and learn programming." "You're a programmer?" Maya asked, her interest genuine now. "I run a tech company now, actually, but it took a long time to get there." "Lots of years of exactly what you're doing, working until you can barely keep your eyes open, wondering if it's all worth it." Maya felt something loosen in her chest. This man understood. He had been where she was now. "Was it worth it?" she asked quietly. "Eventually, yes, but I had help along the way. People who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself." David paused. "What are you working toward? I mean, besides just getting by?" Maya was quiet for a moment. She rarely talked about her dreams because they seemed so far away, so impossible, but something about this conversation felt different. "I'm studying accounting," she said finally, "online, mostly at night after the kids go to bed. I'm about halfway through my certification program." "That's amazing," David said, and he meant it. "Accounting while working 2 jobs and raising kids? How do you find the time?" "I don't sleep much," Maya admitted with a small laugh. "Maybe that's why I fell asleep on your shoulder. I usually study from about midnight to 2 in the morning, then get up at 5:30 to start all over again." David shook his head in amazement. "That's incredible dedication. What made you choose accounting?" Maya's face lit up a little. "Numbers make sense to me. They're reliable. And there are always jobs for accountants. Good jobs with benefits and regular hours. I want my kids to have a stable life, you know? I want them to not worry about whether we can pay rent this month." "Kids?" David asked. 2. Tommy's 8 and Sophia's 6. They're staying with my neighbor tonight. She's amazing. I don't know what I'd do without Mrs. Rodriguez." Maya's voice softened when she talked about her children. "They're both so smart. Tommy wants to be a scientist and Sophia wants to be a teacher. I want to make sure they can be whatever they want to be." David felt that familiar twist in his chest again. This woman was working herself to exhaustion not for herself but for her children's future. "That's beautiful," he said. "They're lucky to have you." Maya looked skeptical. "I don't know about that. I'm hardly ever home. They probably think I don't want to spend time with them, but I have to work. We need the money. Trust me," David said firmly. "They understand more than you think, and they'll appreciate what you're sacrificing for them." The train began to slow as it approached Maya's station. She looked out the window inside. "This is my stop," she said, gathering her small purse. "Thank you for being so nice about, the sleeping thing, and for listening. I don't usually talk about my life with strangers." David reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "This might sound strange," he said, "but I'd like you to have this. If you ever need advice about your career, or if you want someone to look over your resume when you finish your certification, please reach out to me." Maya looked at the card, her eyes widening as she read it. "David Chen, CEO, Tech Forward Solutions." She looked back up at him in shock. "You're a CEO? I just spent the last 10 minutes complaining about my life to a CEO?" David laughed. "You spent the last 10 minutes impressing a CEO with your work ethic and determination. There's a difference." The train doors opened with a soft whoosh. Maya stood up, still clutching the business card. "I don't know what to say," she said. "You don't have to say anything right now," David replied. "Just think about it. Sometimes opportunities come from the most unexpected places." Maya stepped toward the door, then turned back. "Why are you being so kind to me?" "You don't even know me," David thought for a moment. "Because 25 years ago someone was kind to me when I needed it most. And because I can see that you're going to do something amazing with your life." You just need the right opportunity. As Maya stepped off the train, she turned back to wave, but David was already looking down at his phone. She watched through the window as the train pulled away, carrying this mysterious businessman who had listened to her dreams and treated them like they mattered. She looked down at the business card in her hand. The paper was thick and expensive, with raised lettering that felt important under her fingers. At the bottom, in smaller print, was an email address and phone number. Maya had no idea that this small piece of paper would change everything. All she knew was that for the first time in months she felt like maybe, just maybe, things could get better. For 3 days, Maya carried David's business card in her purse like a secret. She would take it out during her breaks at the grocery store, running her thumb over the raised letters of his name and company, Tech Forward Solutions. She had looked them up online during her lunch break and discovered they were a major player in the technology world. With offices in 12 countries and thousands of employees, what could she possibly have to say to someone like that? Every time she thought about sending an email, doubt crept in. He had been kind to her on the train, sure, but that didn't mean he actually wanted to hear from some grocery store cashier with big dreams. He probably gave out business cards to lots of people and never expected them to follow up. But then she would remember the way he had listened to her, really listened. The way he had talked about his own struggles without making them sound easy or glamorous. There had been something genuine in his eyes when he told her to reach out. On Thursday night, after finishing her cleaning shift at 11 p.m., Maya sat in the break room with her phone. Her coworkers had already left, and the building was quiet except for the hum of fluorescent lights. She had 2 hours before she needed to be home to relieve Mrs. Rodriguez, and she usually spent this time studying. But tonight she couldn't concentrate on her accounting textbook. She opened her email app and stared at the blank message screen for 20 minutes. How do you write to a CEO? What did people like that expect? She typed and deleted at least 5 different versions. Dear Mr. Chen, thank you for your kindness on the subway. Delete. Hi David. This is Maya from the train. Delete. To whom it may concern. Delete. Finally, at 12:47 a.m., sitting alone in that empty office building, Maya wrote from her heart, Dear David, this is Maya, the woman who fell asleep on your shoulder on the subway Tuesday night. I wanted to thank you for being so kind to me. You didn't have to listen to me talk about my life, and you definitely didn't have to give me your business card. I've been carrying it around for 3 days, trying to work up the courage to write to you. I keep thinking about what you said about opportunities coming from unexpected places. I don't really know what I'm asking for exactly. Maybe just some advice about how to transition from where I am now to where I want to be. Working 2 jobs while studying at night is hard, and sometimes I wonder if I'm fooling myself thinking I can actually build a better career. If you have a few minutes to share some wisdom with someone who's still figuring things out, I would be really grateful. If not, I completely understand. Either way, thank you for reminding me that there are still good people in this world. Sincerely, Maya. She read it 3 times, almost deleted it twice, then hit send before she could change her mind. Maya didn't expect a response for days, if at all. She imagined David's assistant sorting through hundreds of emails, probably deleting messages from random people who contacted him, but her phone buzzed at 7:23 a.m. the next morning while she was getting ready for work. Maya, thank you for your thoughtful email. I'm glad you reached out. I meant what I said about opportunities, and I think I might have one for you. Would you be available for a phone call this evening? Best, David. Maya read the message 4 times, convinced she was hallucinating from lack of sleep. David Chen, CEO of a major company, wanted to talk to her on the phone about an opportunity. She quickly typed back, Yes, I'm available after 11 p.m. when I finish work. Thank you so much. His response came within minutes. Perfect. I'll call you at 11:15. Maya spent the entire day in a daze. She scanned groceries mechanically, her mind racing with possibilities and fears. What kind of opportunity could he possibly have for someone like her? Was this some kind of mistake? During her break, she called Mrs. Rodriguez to let her know she might be a little late coming home. Mija, you sound excited, the older woman said. What's happening? I don't know yet, Maya said honestly, but maybe something good. The cleaning shift felt endless. Maya kept checking the time, watching the minutes crawl by. She cleaned more thoroughly than usual, needing something to occupy her nervous energy. By 11 p.m., she was sitting in her car in the office building parking lot, hands shaking slightly as she waited for her phone to ring. At exactly 11:15 it did. "Maya, this is David." "Hi," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she intended. "I hope I'm not calling too late. I know you've had a long day." "No, this is perfect. Thank you for calling." David got straight to the point, but his tone was warm. "I've been thinking about our conversation on the train. You mentioned you're studying accounting and that you're about halfway through your certification program." "Yes, that's right. Well, here's the thing. My company has been looking to expand our accounting department. We need someone for an entry-level position, accounts receivable, basic bookkeeping, that sort of thing. It would be perfect for someone who's learning and wants to grow." Maya felt her heart stop. Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you an interview," David said. "But yes, if things go well, it could lead to a position. The pay would be $42,000 a year to start, with full health benefits, dental, vision. We also have a tuition assistance program that would cover the rest of your accounting certification." Maya couldn't speak. $42,000 a year. That was more than she made at both her current jobs combined. "Maya, are you still there?" "I'm here," she whispered. I can't believe this is real." "It's real," David said gently. "The hours would be Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. No weekends, no nights. You'd have time with your kids and time to study." Tears started flowing down Maya's cheeks. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you do this for me?" David was quiet for a moment. "Because I believe in hard work paying off. Because I think you'd be an asset to our team. And because sometimes when you're in a position to help someone, you should. What if I'm not qualified enough? What if I mess it up? Maya, you're working 2 jobs while raising 2 kids and studying for a professional certification. You're more qualified than you think. We're not looking for someone who knows everything. We're looking for someone who's willing to learn and work hard. That's you." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "When would the interview be?" "How about Monday morning at 10 a.m.? I'll send you the address and details. But I work Mondays at the grocery store." "Call in sick," David said simply. "Some opportunities are worth the risk." After they hung up, Maya sat in her car for 20 minutes crying and laughing at the same time. She called Mrs. Rodriguez to tell her she would be a little later than expected. "The good news?" the older woman asked when she heard Maya's emotional voice. "The best news," Maya said. "Mrs. Rodriguez, I think everything is about to change." When she finally got home, Maya checked on her sleeping children. Tommy was curled up with his science book, and Sophia had fallen asleep coloring a picture of their family. Maya kissed both their foreheads and whispered, "Mommy might have found a way to make things better." She spent the weekend researching the company, practicing interview questions, and trying on her only professional outfit, a simple black dress and cardigan she had bought at a thrift store months ago for a previous job interview that hadn't worked out. This time felt different. This time felt like the beginning of something amazing. 6 months later, Maya stood in front of the bathroom mirror in her new apartment, adjusting the collar of a navy blue blazer she had bought with her first bonus check. The reflection looking back at her was the same person, but everything else had changed. The dark circles under her eyes were gone. Her hair was styled professionally instead of pulled back in a tired ponytail. Most importantly, there was something different in her eyes. Hope had replaced exhaustion. "Mom, you look really pretty," Sophia said from the doorway, already dressed in her new school uniform. The private school Maya could now afford had smaller class sizes and better resources. Sophia was thriving there, making friends and discovering a love for art class. "Thank you, sweetie," Maya said, kneeling down to hug her daughter. "Are you excited about your field trip today?" "Yes, we're going to the Science Museum. Tommy says they have real dinosaur bones." Tommy appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over his shoulder. At 9 years old, he was more confident now, no longer worried about whether they'd have enough food for dinner or if they'd have to move again. "Mrs. Rodriguez is here," he announced. "She brought those cookies you like, Sophia." Maya smiled. Mrs. Rodriguez still watched the kids sometimes, but now it was by choice, not necessity. Maya had been able to hire a proper after-school babysitter, but the older woman remained part of their lives because she had become family. "All right, you two, get going. I'll pick you up after school and we can go grocery shopping. The fun kind where we don't have to count every penny." The kids giggled and ran to get their lunch boxes, packed with fresh fruits and sandwiches made with good bread. Not the cheapest white bread Maya used to buy. Maya grabbed her coffee, real coffee from a coffee maker that actually worked, and headed to her car. Not her old car that broke down every few weeks, but a reliable used Honda that David had helped her find through the company's employee assistance program. The drive to tech-forward solutions took her through parts of the city she used to clean at night. Now she was driving to work in daylight, like a normal person with a normal schedule. She still couldn't get over the luxury of working just one job. At the office, Maya badged in at the front desk and took the elevator to the third floor. The accounting department buzzed with quiet activity as people started their day. Maya had her own desk now with a nameplate that read Maya Rodriguez, junior accountant. 3 months ago, she had been promoted from her entry-level position after showing exceptional attention to detail and completing her certification program. The tuition assistance had covered not just her remaining courses, but also exam fees and study materials. "Good morning, Maya," called Janet, the department manager who had become both a mentor and friend. "Ready for the quarterly review meeting?" "Ready as I'll ever be," Maya replied, settling at her desk and opening the financial reports she had been preparing for weeks. The promotion came with more responsibilities, but also more respect and better pay. Maya was now making $52,000 a year, plus bonuses based on department performance. It was more money than she had ever imagined having. During her lunch break, Maya walked to the small conference room where she held weekly tutoring sessions. She had started volunteering to help other employees who wanted to advance their careers but lacked formal education. 3 people showed up regularly: Roberto, a janitor studying for his GED, Lisa, a receptionist learning basic computer skills, and Angela, a single mother from the cafeteria who wanted to become a nurse. "Okay, let's review those practice problems from last week," Maya said, spreading worksheets across the table. Roberto looked up from his notes. "Maya, I got accepted to community college. Financial aid came through and everything." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "Roberto, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." "I never would have tried without your help," he said quietly. "You showed me it was possible." After the session, Maya walked back to her desk thinking about how strange life could be. 6 months ago, she was the one who needed help. Now she was the one helping others believe in themselves. Her computer chimed with an instant message from David. "Great work on the quarterly projections. Could you stop by my office when you have a minute?" Maya's relationship with David had evolved into something like friendship. He checked in on her progress regularly, not in a micromanaging way, but like someone who genuinely cared about her success. She had learned that he did this for several employees, people he saw potential in and wanted to support. She knocked on his office door and found him reviewing financial charts on his computer. "Maya, come in. How are the kids?" "They're wonderful. Tommy made the honor roll again and Sophia joined the art club at school." "That's fantastic." David gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I wanted to talk to you about something. We're opening a new regional office next year, and I think you'd be perfect to help set up their accounting systems. It would mean a significant raise and the title of senior accountant." Maya felt that familiar flutter of disbelief that still hit her when good things happened. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. You've earned this, Maya. Your work has been exceptional, and more than that, you've become a real leader here. The way you help other employees, the mentoring you do, that's exactly the kind of person we want in management." Maya left David's office, walking on air. Senior accountant. It sounded so official, so important. She couldn't wait to tell the kids. That evening, as she helped Tommy with his science project and listened to Sophia practice reading, Maya thought about the chain of events that had brought her here. If she hadn't been so exhausted that night on the subway, if David had been the kind of person who woke her up instead of letting her sleep, if she hadn't found the courage to send that email. Her phone buzzed with a text from Angela, the cafeteria worker she tutored. "Got into nursing school. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself." Maya smiled and showed the message to her kids. "Mom, why do you help so many people?" Tommy asked, looking up from his volcano model. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most," Maya said. "And because when good things happen to you, it feels right to pass them along." Later that night, after the kids were asleep, Maya sat at her kitchen table with her laptop. She was working on something new, a blog about her experience transitioning from service jobs to a professional career. She wanted other people to know that change was possible, that sometimes the most unexpected moments could open doors you didn't know existed. She had already heard from dozens of people who related to her story. Single parents working multiple jobs, people studying at night while exhausted from day jobs, anyone who felt stuck but still had dreams. Maya typed, 6 months ago, I was working 16-hour days and falling asleep on subway trains. I felt invisible, like my struggles didn't matter to anyone. But sometimes all it takes is one person who sees you, really sees you, and believes you're worth investing in. She paused, thinking about David, about that night on the train, about how a simple act of kindness had rippled outward to touch so many lives. The man who let me sleep on his shoulder probably thought he was just being polite, but his kindness gave me rest when I desperately needed it, and eventually it gave me hope when I had almost given up. Now I try to be that person for others. Maya finished writing and closed her laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to grow and help others grow. But tonight she was simply grateful for how far she had come and excited about how far she still had to go. In his own apartment across town, David was looking at a photo on his desk. Maya receiving her Employee of the Year award, smiling brightly as she held the crystal trophy. Next to it was a handwritten note from her. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes. Sometimes letting someone rest on your shoulder can change everything.